Wow. So now it's like, I sprained my ankle, I've had all this, I've had all this stuff, still stiff. Unreal. So even under fasciitis, like everything, nothing is going. Yet I have a chair, which, you know, for like maybe 10 to 15 minutes, 8 hour day.
How are you? Hey, Tom,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can see you.
I'm using Tyler's computer at the moment. We're just finishing up with another client right now, so that's why you know, we're a little, I'm basically filling in for Tyler right now. So
Everything going okay, Alex?
yeah. What's up, Tom? How are you? It's another Tom, by the way.
Yeah, we've got a good crew of them.
Yeah.
No, I'm doing good.
Good.
You're running the show today?
Yeah, I'm running the show today. Just doing the webinar because Tyler's just finishing up with the client right now. So he's going to probably join us, hop on in just a minute. I think, oh, there's Angela. And Tom, we'll also be starting fairly soon. Just give us like 2 minutes, and then once we have a few more people on board, then we'll start recording and then move on.
All right.
So, okay. All right. We're in King of Prussia right now. Right next to the mall.
Where are you based out of?
Well, we're based out of DC, but we deal with some clients in Maryland, Virginia, and the Philadelphia area.
Okay.
So
I'm going to be back at the IW office on Tuesday through Thursday if you're in the area.
Cool. Yeah, no, I mean, we'll definitely be back. We just had to take a quick road trip for these 2 days, and then yeah, we'll definitely let you know.
All right.
All right. So just give me another minute or two, and then we'll get started. And some people, we've had this happen before. We've had a few participants come in a little later. They might be coming in, maybe halfway through. Which they're free to do so. So okay. I think that's Andrew as well, Andrew Ricky. Let's see. All right. All right, and I'll give it just 1 more minute, and that should be it. And
Hey, Alex, this is Andrew. There was I couldn't find and maybe I just missed it, but I couldn't find like the dial-in or information on the Eventbrite thing. I had to go to the one from last week to find the dial-in. I don't know if that's a problem for other people or not.
Yeah, that should have been included in the email, but if for some reason it wasn't, you can actually, yeah, you're fine using the same one. We'll be using the same Zoom link and phone number for everyone, every session.
Yeah, I know that from last week. I don't know if other people, other people are dealing with the same thing who want to dial in. I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks, Andrew. All right, so we're going to get started. Again, Tyler will probably, join us in the next minute or so. He just has to finish up. Oh, we got Daniel here. Hold on. Hey, Daniel. Daniel, can you hear us? Maybe not yet. All right, so Tom, we're gonna get started. All right, and okay. So welcome everyone. We're glad that you can make it to our third installment. Again, this webinar is supposed to focus on ways that we can help solve common problems for small business owners. We're going to be discussing all kinds of different specialties, solutions. We're going to be, presenting specialists from all walks of life who can address small business concerns. So with that said, I'm going to introduce Tom Hashem. He was nice enough to come on board. Tom is a certified safe program consultant and release train engineer. Tom has successfully transformed numerous commercial and federal organizations to agile implementations to help them successfully establish better ways of working. He is passionate about behavioral-driven development and improving system development through improved software quality assurance practices. Tom provides safe training and coaching to teams and leaders, supporting them in achieving improved outcomes for their businesses and their customers. So with that said, welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Good to meet you all. It's my first time doing a webinar, so this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
So about my background real quick is my first half of my career, I was a developer, mostly in Java and back-end services. And then I ended up I live in Charleston, South Carolina, but frequently end up in DC for my day job as the director of software engineering for a firm called Intelligent Waves, which is how I met Tyler and Alex. Through that, I started off as a developer and eventually became what I would call a agile architect, kind of that cross between technical and program management of how do we, we have a software project, how do we know where to get started, how many people do we need, how many dev teams do we need, what types of people do we need on these teams, how's it all going to work together. So that was around 2010 or so when I started first working on that down here in Charleston with a company it was called Spark at the time, and we got real big. We won some. I was the story of catching the tiger by the tail and having it drag you around. So we got a very large VA effort that was run through the Navy's command here in town. And we had to figure out, okay, we're going to do agile development, but how do we scale it? How do we get multiple agile teams to work together? And so we were learning a lot of lessons, different ways to do it. Some things worked, some things didn't. But while we were learning that, at the same time, they there were some folks out in Colorado who got together and led by a man named Dean Leffingwell, who created the Scaled Agile Framework. And the first version of that came out in 2011, and they've been updating that about every year to 18 months. Currently they're on 4.6, and the framework 5.0 should launch in about 2 months. I think it'll be about mid-October. Early November is when they're going to go to 5. So if you're interested in SAFe, you can go to the scaledagileFramework.com, and you'll see a big graphic of what it looks like, what a SAFe framework looks like. And fundamentally, it is built off of strong Agile fundamentals, and then some specific processes and mindset principles on how to get these teams to work together. So I don't know if you usually do these as a question and answer, but I'm happy to talk about it if you have questions about or want me to focus on one particular area or not. We can talk about just the team level Agile and what that means of how you run it. What do you think, Alex? What type of fundamental knowledge would be most useful, do you think?
Yeah. So, and again, this is, this could be more informal. So if anyone does want to ask any questions or, ask anything of Tom, feel free to participate and engage. I guess just to start, if someone who doesn't, if there's a small business owner in our group that doesn't really know too much about agile or lean or even Scrum, how would you, I guess, how would you introduce someone to these concepts? Like, what would be the starting point?
I would recommend a class. Either, the SAFe has their own network of classes, and what it looks like if you go to scaledagile.com, you can see the available training classes, and I teach those classes as well. The first class is called Leading SAFe, and it's exactly that of how do you get started with this, right? And I know I mentioned it from scaling Agile, but it also, in order to scale it, you have to do it well. And so to do it well, you have to understand the fundamentals and what a good Agile team looks like. How do they perform? What does that mean? So for me, what I would say if I'm a small business and I'm getting going is realize the value of training. When I went to the company 10 years ago, it was called Spark. I was there for a month, and it was all new to me. I didn't know what Agile was. This was back April 2010. And I was there 30 days when they sent me to a Scrum Alliance Scrum Master course. And, everything's come a long way from then, but that was invaluable having gone through a class. So it's funny when I work with a lot of different companies, big ones, small ones. I see how, some companies completely embrace training, and they're like, yeah, we'll send our people through. I've definitely seen, small companies with, 20 people, 30 people. Actually, I had a couple of companies even under 10 that were like, no, we're going to take the time to get smart on this and invest it and invest in our people and have them go do it and not just read the webpage, right? Like go into the class, like the SAFe classes, they design them really well. It's not just their material. It's based off a lot of, best of breed business practices and books that are out there, like Daniel Pink's book, leadership books, things like that are baked into this, along with how to do Agile really well. So I would encourage all small companies to take the mindset of, spending the money to invest in training is a good thing. The people that I see really succeed the best have gone to a class. And then even there, it scales up to, I've helped some larger companies, and they've actually like taught classes internally. So it's not just one person going to understand it, but they'll have like, I helped a company move to a SAFe implementation from, they were a pure waterfall solution. So waterfall in software development means, like let's say a project is going to last a year. I mean that you would spend the first 3 months writing all your requirements, these big design documentations,
Mhm.
And then you say, okay, now we're locking it down. This is what we're going to do. And you go build that software for 7 months, and then go to the test bed at the end of that with all your completed software that matched your requirements documentation. And then you're going to pass the test bed and you're going to sign off everything. That is waterfall development. The problem with that is that it rarely goes that well. There's life changes, things, the documentation moves around. It doesn't match what actually the real, hardware is, or whatever the things that you were going to write software to control or do has moved.
Mhm.
You also, the priority, at one point your priorities where you were targeting might have been aimed here, but you actually had to be up here or over here, right? So you're building the software aimed at the wrong target. So Agile, the idea behind Agile is, let's make everything smaller. Let's build logical, componentized pieces of work.
Mhm.
And I'm saying work because I started this conversation about software, but I've seen it done in other areas about process improvements, or even business development for a company. They'll figure out ways to do Agile because when you make things smaller, you can complete them. And so what's nice about that is you bring it to any work environment. When you're completing small pieces, they stack together and you're getting larger pieces done. So it's nice because you're always making progress. You can just check things off. So anyway, that's the big difference between Agile and Waterfall. Is Agile, you do everything once. You have a big design phase, a big writing code phase, or a big testing phase, and you just hope it all comes together at the end. Whereas with Agile, you're always doing all these steps. You're continually doing requirements, continually building software, continually testing it, and that's what would occur in a sprint cycle.
Okay.
Um,
So that I'm somewhat familiar with Scrum, which I believe takes these principles, right, or kind of incorporates these practices into producing something, testing it out in the market right away. And then these sprints, more often than not, will just be like maybe a week long, maybe longer than that. And then after the sprint, then you come back with your team members, you review, what went well. You review, all kinds of different feedback for that product, and then, continue iterating. If there's something that isn't working, or maybe if there's a project that you'd like to postpone, maybe you put it on like a product backlog, right? And then revisit that project or revisit that development later. Is that correct? Or am I getting?
pretty close, and I can walk through that if you'd like to.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so in SAFe, and again, this isn't a SAFe thing. This is like good Agile fundamentals. SAFe is built off of Scrum, like you said there.
Right.
With Scrum is the idea that you have these iterations, sometimes called a sprint, sometimes called a iteration, and it's a time box, certain number of weeks. So typically they're 2 to 3 weeks long. You can do it shorter depending on if that's possible for your group, but I would say most times it's 2 or 3 weeks. And you have overall, I would call it 3 different roles. There's the Scrum Master, whose job is to be the facilitator and the coach and to help all the groups get through everything. There's the Product Owner, who runs the business side, why you're doing this work. They're the ones prioritizing and helping to break down the acceptance criteria for the work. So they're, if you're, whatever context it is that you have, the product owner would be the person going, well, at the end of the day, I care about X, right? And so they're the one that is accepting whether or not X has been completed. So the Scrum Master facilitates, helps get this group together. The product owner is the business side, helping to make certain that they're working on the right thing. And then the dev team, or the Agile team, is the solutioning aspect. So in software development, it's a one-for-one fit. It works really well. When I, at Spark back in the day, we ran our business development, our recruiting, our program management. We ran all these as Agile teams. So this is non-traditional areas that we were able to run in an Agile manner. So for instance, recruiting, when we won those big VA projects, we had to do this massive amount of recruiting. As a small company, I was employee 5, and when we left, we had close to 400 people at that time over the span of 3 years. So a lot of growth. And so to do that, we had to sort of track what were the normal activities that were done to find new people, to bring new people on, to onboard them, to educate them. And we created user stories for recurring activities. And we were able to track how much time we spent in each of these activities and move candidates through these Kanban boards. You ever heard of a Kanban board before?
No, but I've heard of user stories. Do you guys call them epics within that framework?
Yeah, so in SAFe, what it is if you have a really big work item, like the biggest you can, giant item, that's an epic. And an epic could go some indeterminate amount of time. It's a really large piece of work. But as you have people involved with this, you're starting to break it down, you create features out of it. So an epic could have a certain number of features, which are still large work items, but they have an end date to them. Meaning you're going, okay, if try to think of a good epic for your example. I'm going to say you're a software company in the strategic bond market, right? So you're going to do we want to create a new software system that will allow our customers a faster way to make decisions on financial opportunities available to them. So a very high level, just big thing. And you go, okay, well, the CEO decided to do that. Let's break that down into actionable things we could do. So to start with, we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna have a feature for that to have a web portal that users could log into and be able to see the latest bond market, be able to get personalized reports based on their profile, be able to set up a profile, and be able to refer a friend to the system, right? So that would be a way that if I've got this big epic of all sorts of things I could think of, well, to start with it all, I want to build this web app that'll let you do those 4 or 5 things. So that would be a feature, would be the web app. Then if you're doing a SAFe implementation, a feature means that you could get that done in 3 months or within a what they call a program increment. And so a program increment is made up of 5 or 6 sprints. So this is how all this stacks up. So you've heard of sprints before of, 2 week, 2 week, 2 week, 2 week.
Right.
So what they call in SAFe is when you take all of those sprints and add them together, you have a program increment. So you would have you have a sprint planning event, a daily stand-up, and a sprint review about what you're doing every 2 weeks. You do a program increment planning event and a program increment review. And the idea would be you would bring that feature of let's create a web app for our bond market, and then we would. I just got to know. Do you still have my internet? Am I still on? Okay.
Yeah, you're still good. Still
good. Okay. So you would you'd bring that to the program increment planning event. We'd have our teams look at it and go, okay, we're to accomplish that web app and hit the acceptance criteria. These are all the user stories that we need to do. But the user stories can only be 1 sprint long. So you can see it all stacks together. So a user story is the smallest piece of work that at the most it would be 2 weeks long if we were running 2-week-long sprints. Because the goal is with a sprint is you will always finish your work that you sign up for in that sprint. So you can't have a user story that's multiple sprints long. You'd have to split that in half and make it into multiple user stories. So when you handle it that way, and you have a number of user stories that teams are signing up for, they're completing them every sprint. After a couple sprints, they will finish their features, and then their features add up to completing that web app by the end of that distracted me too. By the end of the program. So does that help? So you can sort of see how everything stacks up?
Yeah, can I ask a question? I know I missed a little bit, so sorry about that, Tom. But a user story, that's almost like a feature, like maybe somebody can log in or something?
Yeah. So you could create, like for the feature of the web app, and those number of high-level acceptance criteria on it, you could have a user story that's, they have to be formatted a certain way. So typically the formatting says, as a blank, I want blank, so that blank. So a user story for what you just said would be, as a bond web portal user, when I enter my username and password, then I should go to my homepage, right? So that would be a user story representing the behavior of a user logging into a system and going to a homepage.
Awesome.
The developer would get that and go, okay, I need to create I need to create 2 different web pages. I need to create the objects to be able to gather a login password and be able to transmit that over the right encryption and compare it with what's in the database, that it's right there. And then once that's happened, they would end up at the page. So there's like maybe 4 or 5 steps involved to get that user story done. So that's how that would break that. So that would be one user story representing one part of a feature.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yep. So so that's agile development in a nutshell. Is the dev team is completing these user stories over the course of a sprint, or in SAFe we call it an iteration, but it's the same thing. And they have a sprint planning event beginning of every sprint where they select a certain number of user stories they're going to do during that time period. Then they have a sprint review at the end of the sprint where they say, how did it go? Did we get all of our stories done? If not, why? What was the problem? What wasn't completed? And then they start it over again, and they do the next sprint. On the next day, they start off a new sprint. So that goes indeterminately. If you're just doing an agile solution, they'll just keep going sprint to sprint to sprint. In a SAFe solution, you have multiple teams. You need to scale it. SAFe stands for Scaling Agile, the Scaled Agile Framework. Then you would do the program increment planning sessions, which what I said earlier about a larger chunk of time, maybe 5 or 6 sprints. And every 5 or 6 sprints, you have a separate planning meeting sort of dictating how all these teams are going to work over the course of 3 months. So.
Okay, so the safe part, if I'm hearing you correctly, is I think about back when I was a bomb tech, right? I used to disarm bombs in the military, and when I'm thinking about that, I always learn how to do something effectively by myself and learn my job, how I do it by myself. But then I have to also coordinate that with the broader team and learn how to work as a team. Is that kind of what SAFe does? It enables you to enact over the broader teams and bring those components together?
Yeah, pretty much. Just almost bringing it up one more level. Like if you're on a team right now, how do you get multiple teams to work together is what it would be. So you said you were a bomb tech, is that right?
Yeah.
So maybe you had a team of bomb techs, and then you had a team of
engineers,
support expeditionary forces, and a team of reconnaissance, like that.
Yeah.
SAFe would be about how all 3 of those teams work together.
Very cool.
So if I hit this button, will it share my desktop? Will that work?
You should be able to.
Can you see it?
Oh, there we go.
Oh, super cool.
Yep.
So that's you're seeing the framework here, right?
Yeah.
So that's the SAFe, the Scaled Agile Framework from their website, scaledagileFramework.com, and it's really helpful. It's a nice utility, even if you don't need to do SAFe because you don't have multiple teams. If you just look at it, you can look at this. Are you seeing my mouse too when I move my mouse?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Then this bottom layer is team level agile. And if you have questions about, what does a Scrum Master do? Then you can click on a Scrum Master. And you can read about everything.
I didn't even know you could actually click on the map.
Yeah, you could click on the map, and that's how you can, like that. These are all the duties that a Scrum Master will typically do. They have to have the right agile mindset, understand the importance of breaking work down, support the team rules, facilitate team progress towards team goals, always look for relentless opportunity improvements, work with the product owner, eliminate impediments. They're the ones who have to solve these problems for their teams of, I can't complete something because of X. Okay, well, let's figure out how to do that. They communicate. They support the estimating when they're determining how many of these user stories they can get through. So, yeah, so it's pretty good. The website's pretty handy for hopping around. And you can also see what a product owner does. They're the business representative. maintain the team backlog. Those are the work items that the teams will be breaking down and solving. They host the iteration planning. So that's where the teams will decide how much work they're going to sign up for and accomplish during a time box week or two, depending how many weeks they got. They accept the user stories. So as the teams are finishing the work, it doesn't count. You don't just take the team's word for it. They have to demonstrate the success to the product owner. So it's a nice symbiotic relationship between all these, where everybody has distinct roles, and that's where it goes back to it's helpful to go through training to have an understanding of not just what you should be doing, but what the people who are in their roles should be doing. So a dev team should understand what is in bounds for a Scrum Master to do and what is out of bounds, and why the Scrum Master is asking them to do the things that they are. So,
Tom, can I ask a question? My name's Stephen Campbell. I came in late and was not wearing a shirt when we started this conversation. It's been a busy day. But I'm here, and I'm wondering, so is this, and I apologize if you already answered, is this industry specific? I'm trying to follow the flow of this diagram.
So, Stephen, so SAFE is used for larger enterprises, but you can use the SAFE practices for smaller teams and small businesses.
Okay.
Yep. And really, that's why, like, if you look at the framework, you're like, oh, I have a small team, or I'm being asked to participate in a small IT project that's doing Agile. What does that mean? You could always go to this website and just look at the bottom layer, right? If you look at the bottom layer, then you'll understand what a dev team should do, what a product owner does, and what a Scrum Master should do, right? So it's at its simplest part will help you understand Agile just right there.
Sure.
I work predominantly in supporting government programs, and it's not always a one-for-one with software development. It can also, we've done it on areas like process determination, infrastructure research, or standing up. So you can create work items that are of different sizes in other domains besides just software development. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
The other key part of it, we've talked about the bottom layer, and that's Agile teams working together.
Tom, before you jump into something else, I think Tom Karst had a question. Did you have your hand raised, Tom?
Yeah, I had a quick one for you also, Tom. When we're talking about, through your experience with missed deadlines or kind of misapplied goals for small teams, when you're getting into the discussions of why and how that happened, what do you recommend for a mentality of taking to deal with those issues?
So that's a one-for-one of a very good match for Agile, because we always want to improve, right? But what's also important is there's never a perfect time to get started. Sometimes you just got to get started with this stuff, and when you're just getting started, you don't have a way to really know if you're taking off, if you're taking on too much work versus not enough, right? You're just sort of spitballing what you're going to do. So a lot of this comes back to a culture thing. That's why there's a lot of mentions in here about, at the bottom, like core values and lean agile mindsets, et cetera, because you want to be able to have a team that is completely comfortable saying anything to each other of, we're falling behind. It's my fault. I thought this was going to take this long, and it's taking me a lot longer. You need to be able to have trust and openness as a team in order for people to own up to their mistakes. Because the goal is that we're always getting better. It's like, yeah, mistakes are fine. It's going to happen, at the team level, at the person level. But let's learn from it, and let's make improvements to try to get ahead of that next time, right? Like, let's remember, oh, well, next time we're doing this, and we usually, to go back to Tyler's earlier thing about a question about user stories. Another part of user stories is that you'll size them for complexity, so that during a sprint planning, how many user stories that you want to sign up for to accomplish during that 2-week period of time. So if you're having a review and we had signed up to get 10 stories done, ranging from a complexity level of 2 points to something that'd be 4 or 5 times more complex, which would be like an 8 point or a 13 point. And you would get different point levels, and that's where you come up with where a team will determine what its velocity is, or how many story points they can get accomplished every sprint. So if you were doing that, you signed up for 10 stories with a point value of 40 points, right, is what you thought your team was going to get done. But you get to the review and you got 7 stories done at a point value of 34, right? So you had some things that you just were not able to finish. You could then look for, okay, well, I think we, what were the causes of that? So that's where the Scrum Master would be leading those discussions. And the Scrum Master is a coach, a servant leader. It's not someone out to blame anyone. It's out to just be kind of doing root cause analysis. So why did this happen? What can we do to improve this? How can we get more accurate at sizing our stories? Because that might have been it right there, is they just underestimated the complexity of the work they were trying to do, or how long it would take to get some of these items done. And so, especially early on as you're implementing an Agile solution, I would expect to see that, and it kind of would be reactionary, where it would, I'm taking that off so I can go back to me. Like if you're looking at your average, number of points getting done, you might see a team do this, or because they're kind of figuring out like what they, how much work they can get done, right? So they thought we're going to get this much work done, but then they weren't able to complete it. So then they underestimated, and they planned a lot lower. And then that doesn't look good because they didn't get much done, but they estimated it high. And so you kind of end up with these jagged spikes as they're determining what their actual velocity would be, and what is actually achievable. Of like, okay, well, we're kind of figuring out, we stay around, we can get, 36 points of work done each sprint, each iteration. So if 36 points is right here, it might have taken a little bit of jags around it to kind of determine how we got to what was our normalized number. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I was looking to hear.
Yeah. So I'm waving my finger around. This is a very scientific way to do this.
Absolutely. It's the best way to do it.
And Tom, on a really small team, because I know a lot of the business owners we work with, they might have 2 to 3 people on them, maybe upwards of 7 to 10 or so. What do you recommend for those really small teams of the 2 to 3 range?
You could still do it. Probably what you're doing is you might be running more in line with a Kanban team, where, so the point of doing Scrum is that you're so Scrum is typically around a 5 to 7 person development team with a Scrum Master and a product owner. So you're looking at, a group of 8 to 10 people, right? So you have somebody who's accepting the work and prioritizing the work. You have a group of people who are solving the work problems, and then you have one person that's keeping all this running and making certain people are doing the right things and trying to solve systemic problems so the developers don't have to do that, but they do it, right? So that's a group of 10 people. If you have less than that, Scrum might not make sense for you, and that's certainly valid if it's a lot smaller. But you can still get a lot of the benefits of an Agile implementation, sort of figuring out what makes sense for that environment. And a pure Kanban team might be your better approach. Where a Kanban team, Kanban was invented back in the 80s by Toyota. It's in one of the classes we talk about it, but it's usually thought of in terms of a Kanban board, where you have these, you create work lanes that your work has to go through. So say for you, strategic bonds, and I'm going to invent things about your industry. You go, okay, I get a customer call. When a customer call comes in, the first step is to do a triage and what type of customer it is. Okay. Then it's what type of request is it? Okay. Then it's all right, what type of purchase is it? Or what type of solution am I doing? What type of implementation for a solution am I doing for them? And then it's almost like a maintenance phase for that customer, right? So you might decide, and that's your flow of work all the way across what you were doing as a 3-person investment company, right? So you could start to track that and create like literally a physical board, or there's software tools, and determine what stages make sense for you, and just always know like, oh, look, like this week we got 9 people through our system. They, 9 calls came in, some of them dropped off because they didn't end, but 7 of them led to completion. And the reason you might want to do that is when you come up with those lanes and you determine what lanes make sense for my work, I don't know if the lanes I said make sense for your work. And you could start to see like, okay, well, we've got 5 different, we're always able to kind of keep 1 or 2, 3 in the phone call stage or the contact stage, a couple in the working with the customer stage and determining strategy, but we've got 19 things in the apply the money to the purchase stage, right? And so then we got like 3 items here in the watching stage. And we're really, there's a lot of work getting stuck in the apply it to a contract situation. Maybe that's where we need to focus our efforts to improve this. And that's the data I need to warrant going off to go hire somebody for $30,000, because it's going to improve the flow of my system so much more, because instead of having 19 in there, because I'm not going, hey, Alex, I want you to stay up till 11 p.m. every night and start at 6 a.m. I can double that by hiring somebody cheaper, So get somebody right out of college and make your own justification, and they can eliminate that stopgap there. Does that help?
Yeah. So you can really see that, you can see where the things are building up and where your flaws are, and you can apply resources or support to. And
yeah, and that's what they talk about, like identifying your constraints, your bottlenecks. So in the SAFE classes, we talk about how to do that in the Scrum Master courses.
Cool. Thanks for providing that.
So Tom, for smaller teams, small businesses, as far as like a starting point for this mindset and for this framework, you would recommend Kanban over Scrum, or one of the two?
Yeah, so there's both teams work in SAFE. Like we have Kanban teams, we have Scrum teams, because Kanban is more like you don't have an ability to plan or to size. So a production operations team or a support team for a fielded system, they might be a lot more reactive, meaning they're going to get help desk calls that they have to go handle or watch, what's going on, versus a dev team that's going, okay, we got to come up with a plan on what we're going to work on over the next 3 months, right? It's kind of different ways to do it. So if you're really small, it's hard to justify spending all this time planning when you're the only person doing it, because then you're like, well, I could be doing it, I don't need to be planning it, right? So you might be going, okay, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll make a Kanban board because it's me and my brother and we're a startup dev company, but we still need to bring some level of structure to this. Then let's make a Kanban board for our app, and we'll create an initial backlog, but we don't have time to size it. There's no reason to, because there's only the 2 of us. And we'll make a board that's, design, build, test, release. And we just, once a week, maybe we might move some of the items around in the priority level, but we don't size it because there's no point. We're just grabbing these things from the top and moving them across every single time. That's probably what I would recommend for very, very small. Now you get to 10, 12 people, which still isn't that large of a company, then it probably makes more sense to go to a Scrum implementation, because there's a lot more benefits to that, more reliability, a lot more knowledge sharing, because when you have a Scrum team, the idea is that anybody can work on a work item. You're what they call the difference between an I, a T, or an E skill set. That's out of some book. I've read the book that's it, but the idea being, in an I skill set, I'm good at this right here. That's all I do. It's just this one thing. In a T, I'm good at everything here at about 20%, and I'm really good at this, right? So most people are a T, and in a Scrum team, most of the people they still might say like, oh, well, I'm actually better at writing test automation. But I like to help in the, the Java front end, JavaScript design stuff every now and again, but it's not my strength, right? So a T is trying to grow people's 10 to 20% this way, even though they're really good at this part. And then when you have an E person, an E is those special types of engineers who can do multiple things, like they're really good at it. They're a back-end developer and they're a designer, right? Or et cetera. So any other questions? Did I lose you?
No, still
Nope.
here.
Okay.
No, that's great. And anybody, if you have any other questions, absolutely feel free to chime in. Otherwise, if there's nothing more to add, we're happy to wrap it up early and get everybody onto their Fridays and onto the weekend. But any other questions out there?
Yeah, and I work for Intelligent Waves. We're a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. So if you are in federal contracting, feel free to reach out to me there. I'll plug myself there. And I enjoy teaching the SAFE classes. So if you have any questions about SAFE classes, let me know.
Awesome. And can we share out your information with the rest of the group as well? And we can always follow up and do that.
Yes. Yep. Definitely.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks, Tom. Thank you so much for coming in. Once again, apologies for popping in a bit late here, but thank you much for coming on and doing this. And we appreciate it. And we look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Yeah, great. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you very much, Tom.
All right.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.